Hi, welcome to video 11. In this video, we will learn Introduction to JDBC, Java Database Connectivity, Understanding JDBC Architecture, Java Database Connectivity with MySQL, and Performing CRUD operations with MySQL. As of now, what we have tried doing is we wanted to store the data to the file. Now, obviously, storing the data in the file has its own advantages and disadvantages. I would say there are more of disadvantages than advantages. The problem with the files are not with the storages. The problem with the files is on the verge of retrieval. So if I have an end user, if I have an end user who wants to keep the data to the file, we have already seen it. But now let's explore on something called as database. So all our databases, at least as of now, we use any of the database for that matter, which is SQL database. Somebody like MySQL, Oracle, DB2, DB, Postgres, anybody in the world, SQL Server, anybody. The whole idea here is to keep the data to the database. Now, these database are all vendors. So let's call these people are vendors. Vendors. So who are this? They are somebody like MySQL, Oracle, DB2, Postgres, etc. Right? So these are few people who are there in the market. On the other end, we have Java. So what is your Java? Which is a programming language, right? That's why Java will keep all the data in the form of dot class file, or I'll say in the simplest term, which is called as bytecode. Bytecode. So bytecode is the architectural neutral code in our case, which is the portable code. Now, if I try understanding what is the file type of storage of vendors, they all differ from each other. Obviously, as Java has their own specific way of storing it, obviously database will have their own specific way of storage. If I go to C and C++, they store it in OBJ file. In Java, we keep it as class file. In .NET, we have class files. When we go for MySQL, we keep the files in form files. That is FORM, form files. When it comes to Oracle, we keep it as a P code. Now, likewise, every database obviously will have their own best practices and they would have taken a call as how to store the data. So, as an example, we were trying to serialize. I always make sure that the file extension would be .scr. And any file which is serialized, it has to be deserialized. There is no other mechanism in the world which can be extracted directly to see it. Obviously, there are a lot of things which come into picture: security, portability, and various aspects. Today, we have over 800 plus databases in the world. So now, can I go back to Java and say that, hey, look at this, Mr. Java. Today, we want to store the data to a database, but I don't know what database. And can you help me to code? Java is like little confusion. Says that, okay, you have 800 databases. How can I make 800 database to map to my programming language, which is really, really challenging. And we don't know, even in the near future, people will stop inventing. Obviously, people will go ahead and start inventing their own newer versions of database. So the whole idea here is we will not take care of all these things. There are some third-party vendors who, on the verge of it, there are certain rules which we have to follow. It. So what are the rules? Let's list it down. When I have a programming language, somebody like Java, who want to port the data here in the database, I will have or I may have to deploy some piece of code, and this piece of code is called as API. So whenever I try using a code which is called as API, this is meaning application program interface. So any application, if you want to talk with each other, because Java happens to be one application, DB happens to be one application. If I want to talk to each other, I need an interface. So this interface will be an actor between two parties. So anywhere, even in the real time, when you write a piece of code and if you want to sell it in the market, you will say, "Hey, we have an API. Would you like to buy it?" For example, today I am building a website. Imagine yourself today if I'm building a website and I want a payment gateway. I don't have to really go ahead and build the payment gateway at all. Rather, what I do is I'll go to somebody like PayPal or somebody like Citibank, BofA. We'll go to these guys and say that, okay, we want a payment gateway API. These people have written everything what is required for API, and they give you the invoking method so that if you have collected some money, you just have to invoke this API. This will take care rest of the job. In similar fashion, if I want to put the data in the database, you don't have to really bother about taking data from here to here. This is not something which we want to do. If I have to do this, then we have 800 databases. Today, of course, we are starting with one database. If you think of the large scale where we want to at least put it like, for some reason, our company has got about 10 databases to be storing. So few databases are used for ETL, few are used for reporting, few are used for transaction based, and so on. So we don't want to do all these things. Rather, we can go with API. Now, what is this API? Now, APIs as of now are all written in the jar file. So they're all like jar. So what is a jar? A jar is a Java archive. Just to give a little heads up, have a look at this. Tomorrow, if you want to ship my code, if you want to ship my code, so what I can do is I can go back to this project. I can right click. You have an option called as export. Just do it like jar, jar file. Say next. You have like various checks, so you can spend some time reading this. But as of now, I want to browse it and keep it on desktop. I'll say Naveen works. So here you can say export generated class files and resources, export all output folders and check project, blah blah blah, all this thing. And say finish. What this guy jar patient field, see that you say okay. So I think I should click on next, export the file. Okay, okay. Hope this is okay. So here you see there is a file which is called as naveenworks.jar. So if when I open, it will have a list of class files. So if I go to com yesterday, so let's consider day file. Here you will have list of all class files. So again, if I say class files, if I go ahead and view it, you will not see what is there. You will not see what is there. If I go to this file and say view this, you will not see what is that. But the whole idea here is when you access this jar file in your application, your JVM can understand what it is. Is that good? So what we did, in our case, we have written an API for understanding. For example, if I want to calculate difference between two dates, for doing it, for doing it, so what we have got is we have got an API. So you pass two dates. This function, this method will take two dates and give you difference of two dates. That's an API form. In similar fashion, for database, I have an API. So what my API does is it will try taking the data from the Java. Now, when you try taking the data in the Java, it pretty much tries taking in the form of a string fashion. So what is my string fashion? There are few operations which one is insert, update, delete, select. We want to take one of this jar and I give it to this jar file. Hey, look at this, Mr. API, and today I want to insert. So if I want to insert, I would have created parallelly. I would have created a table. Let's assume that the table happens to be something called as EMP, which will have its own attributes. I'll say, take this. I'll also tell you which table it has to go with, and you have to port it here. So what happens? Intermediate, there are a lot of calls which has to be converted from bytecode to underlying operating system call, underlying database system call. Sorry, it is underlying database system call. If you don't have anybody called API, then you have to understand how MySQL is working, what is the file structure of it, how data is represented, all the stories. Rather, I can have somebody as an end user who's only using Java and send it to API. The API will just take care of all this thing. How does this happen? If I have somebody called as MySQL, people from MySQL, people from this team who Sun Microsystem, today Oracle Corporation, has sat together and worked out an algorithm where you can port it. So if you have Oracle, they would also join the party. So if it is DB2, they will also come. If it is Postgres, they will also come. If there are like hundreds of databases in the world, every vendor in the world have to come and talk to Java and get the license. It's not like costable. It's just a set of interfaces these people have defined it and they're just using it. Tomorrow, imagine we ourselves come out with one more database, something called as XYZ. Then I should also have some kind of understanding where you will make sure this XYZ set of people from the team will talk to Sun Microsystem because they send you white code where you create a API. You team up and create an API. And this API is put in open market. Open market. So when I say open market, this API is there pretty much with everybody in the world because Java itself is a openware. So now everybody in the world who gets amalgamated with the Java have to be in the openware. There are few paid versions. They work a little differently. We're gonna try knowing it. There are a few applications also. Somebody like Toplink is one guy who does. It's again an Oracle product and so on. But of course, our discussion is not on a specific tool, but to understand how things work. But on the verge of it, if I try taking Java to port the data, there are a few rules which we will have to undergo. There are a few technical jargons which we have to know. Let's have a look at this. So on the verge of it, imagine today I have an application. The application happens to be something called as Java, and we want to store it in database. On the verge of storing in a database, what my database can understand is a language which is called as SQL. Any database for that matter in the world, they have to understand SQL because that is how most of our SQL databases are built. Of course, each of the database will have some cosmetic changes. That's another story. But on hypothetical situation, they understand a language called as SQL. So on the other hand, you have Java. Java produces class file. Now, database cannot understand C class file. At the same time, SQL cannot be understood by Java. So there is a possibility where we can fit it. So since the API is already there, we create something called as a bridge. There is something called as a bridge. Now this bridge is called as driver manager. Driver manager. Okay. Driver manager for us is an interface. There's an interface which these people have already written it, which is called as driver manager. Now imagine I want to port or if I want to write some statement, something like this. Insert into EMP with values 101 hack. So this was string. Now this statement, when you are trying to give it, will be stored in certain fashion. So where is it? It is in some variable. Let's assume this. I'll have a string SQL is equal to something. The whole idea for us is to take this data and send it here in this driver manager and give it to database. Obviously, as a database will understand what is SQL, it tries keeping it. But unfortunately, I cannot send the string directly. Rather, I should find a mechanism because this driver manager is bound to certain rules. So what we do is we have some dedicated people out there in this world when you want to take the data. Now this is something called as there are like few people. The first and foremost here it is called as statement. There's somebody called as prepared statement. I'll tell you what is the difference of all these three. Callable statement. Callable statement. Now, first and foremost, the first guy who's called as a statement. So, statement can take pretty much any statement in the world for any database for that matter. There's another guy who's called as a prepared statement, who is a child of statement. He does everything what your statement will do. Plus, he can also help you to have execute batch. If you want to have batch operations, they can help. On the other side, you have callable statement. Callable statement does everything what your prepared statement will do. Plus, it can help you to invoke procedures and functions in underlying database. These are three people. They all have parent-child relationship to each other. Now, now, so if I want to have this data, so what I do is I will take one of this guy. It could be prepared statement, statement, or callable statement. Whoever I take this variable, which is called a SQL. The SQL will contain the insert statement. Now, what I do is I'll port this SQL, or I'll probably send. Let's consider something like this. In my case, I want to use prepared statement for whatever reason because they are pre-compiled. They have a good uh, performance as well. So what I do is I try taking the prepared statement and try sending the detail. Now what happens as I keep sending the prepared statement, the SQL is also going. Now the whole idea here, when you want to send it, send the data from one end to other end, you have to use one of the three transport mechanisms for traveling. It's something like this. If you want to travel from one place to other place, you use car. Now, when you sit in the car, since the car is moving, you also move. It is not you are moving. Your car is moving. Since the car is moving, you are moving. So on the verge of it, I have somebody called as PS. PS is moving. Since PS is moving, the SQL is also. So internally, there are a few complex operations which gonna happen. This will eventually go and give it after some time. Eventually, go and give it to database. The database, what this guy does is he will extract the SQL only. He will go ahead and delete what is not required for me. So I don't want to understand what is called as a prepared statement or whatever. So I just go here and delete it, right? So I have SQL. What is SQL? SQL is a value which is having this content, like insert into EMP with values 101 and Harry. So obviously, this statement is understood by database. It does the job. Once it does the job, on the words of it, very importantly, we have to understand there is an acknowledgement given by every system in the world. If it is DML operation, it will give you an acknowledgement of type int. When I say int, it is the number of rows which are affected in the database. Is that okay? If I say int, it is number of rows affected in the database. There's another operation which can possibly happen, which happens to be DQL, so which is data query language, which gives you something called as result set. So what is my result set is a different story. So as of now, try knowing it. When I give insert, it will give you number of records affected. But when I say DQL, there's only one statement in our discussion which we're gonna use, which is called as select. Select is one statement which can help you to do this. Now, when I do something like this, select asterisk from employee, maybe the output is something like 101 Harry, this 102 Peter, 103 Scott, right? This may be the output. This whole together, people coming from database, please map this in database. We call it cursor. The same thing in Java, we call it result set. So people who call as cursor in database is called as result set in Java. So what happens? You give a select statement. This guy, the database, what he does is he will port everything and send you as an acknowledgement. Here it will be cursor. Here it will be result set. It's the same name. So there are some cosmetic changes which we gonna see it when we go for implementation. But as of now, when I try getting it, each of these records are kept pretty much in each row fashion. So this will be one row for us. This may be another row for us, right? Makes sense. So I have to extract it. On the verge of extracting, I have to capture this data and give it to application. So here, the atomic value is 101, Harry, 2323. Obviously I can get entire line, but the whole idea here is to break down to atomic value so that it goes into readable fashion to extract it and see it in the bare eyes. That's a whole idea which you try having it. So we want a Java application. Of course, we're gonna write it. On the other side, I want a database. So database happens to be MySQL in my case. So what I do is I'll create a table, a very simple table. So to put the data, or we are just building a structure of the table. So on the verge of it, I use command line. You're free to use anything of your choice. I try using command line here, MySQL command line. So let me increase the font size. Background, let's make it white. Screen text is black, and options for the font is about 24. Perfectly fine. Sounds good. So I'll put the password. So this is where the passwords are. I want to show the databases. So I have like so many databases. Let me create a database quickly, which is called as create database online DB. So this is freshly created database. I'm gonna say use online DB and say show tables. As of now, I don't have any tables. So let's create a table. I put it in Notepad just for our reference. I want to create a table. Let's say the table is something like customer or person or employee or account, anything is fine. So we'll take something like, okay, customer. So I'll have customer ID, which is int, which is primary key. Then I have customer name, which happens to be the varchar here of like 30. And here I can give, instead of wasting too much of space, I can give varchar of 30. Customer email, which is varchar of, let's consider about 45. Customer income, which is decimal of 9, so which meaning 9 is on the seven characters are on the left hand side, and 2 is a precision. So that's the whole idea. So I think these four fields are good. So if you want more, you can go ahead and try doing it. There's not a very complex thing where we come across with the foreign keys or referential integrity constraints and so on. Let's go back and paste it and check if things go well. Yes, I have a table. So let's do DESE customer. I have this. This is perfectly fine. So what we have done so far is we went to database, we tried creating MySQL. In the MySQL, we tried having the database. Let's consider there are a few details which we have to know. That's basically metadata. People coming from MySQL, everybody knows that it is by default 3306, which is the port number. Uh, in my case, I'll be using 3306, which is a default port number for connection because MySQL is installed in 3306. I don't have multiple instances. People who are working on lab servers, something like Apache and so on, in that case, you have to be a little cautious. Try knowing it what port number it is. So then, the database name is called as online DB. So that's where you have it. And it is running in my system. I want username, password. I have all recorded this. So the username is root. I have the password. And it is local host. Local host. So that's a whole idea which we have. So I have to know this data. Now the question is, if you know this data, somebody has to help you to take it, right? Who will take it? What your Java will pretty much do is, or your application in the world, it may be any application, what they do is, they'll have a pipe. There will be somebody who can help me to take the data from one end to other end. But before this, Java has to know where this information is kept. Now, this information which is kept will be stored in a variable which is called as driver manager. The driver manager will be one responsible person to know where the database is located. This may be in the local host as of today, it may be in some cloud, or it may be on network system or whatever. With whatever credentials, whatever database, the port number, blah blah blah, all these things are stored in database. I'm sorry, driver manager. I would say driver manager is somebody who is here who makes sure that all the data which is going and coming is invigilated or known. So now, if I want to send a SQL, so the SQL are not sent here. Rather, the SQL is sent in a bucket. Of course, we tried discussing this yesterday. If you recall this, I tried creating a bucket, and we call this bucket name, which is called as PS, which is prepared statement. So now what we do is we'll take this guy who is a complete bucket and hold it and keep sending it. As the PS is moving, the SQL is also moving it, and it goes to database with all the credentials. So I will say driver manager, hey, look at this driver manager. I want to send this SQL statement. I want to send this SQL statement to your driver manager. What does your driver manager have? It will have complete details of information what is being or information as to where this data has to be ported. That's pretty important to know. So a quick heads up, as of now, you have taken care of this part. So let's keep taking it. You're taking care of this part, you're taking care of this part. We just created a database and we know few details. So I'm sure that in your case, if you have only one instance of uh, database, it will be 3306. Then let's go back to this guy who's called Java and see how things can be done here. So here it is day 10. I'll keep this as it is. I don't want to create a package this time. I want to create a source folder. Source folder. So here under SRC, I'll create a source folder. Look at this. I'm not creating a package. I'm creating a source folder, JDBC. So there will be another source folder which is very similar to SRC. So anything which you want can be kept here. But the whole idea of me creating source folder is I want to show some level of architecture, which even folder maintenance in Java is very important. And the packages, how we structure is really, really important. So what I do is to start with, I'll quickly create few packages. Say com dot sdit dot jdbc dot uh, beans. Now, when I say beans, so or bean or entity, all meaning same. It again depends on the company, what naming convention they use it. I just use it like beans. So the whole idea here is one bean class or what you call in Java, one bean meaning in database, one table. That's a whole. That's what the narration is. So I would say finish. So that's the first package. Let me create another package. The package here is com.state.jdbc.connection. So this is another package which is pretty widely used. Even in your projects, if you see, there will be a package which is called as connection. But this package called as connection will not have too many files. It will hardly run with one or two files. So what is that? This will have only the connection information for your application. The next guy, the next package, which is com.state.jdbc.dow. Now, when I say DAO meaning it is data access object. Any insert, update, select, delete, whatever operation which you want to do it in the database, that has to be written only in this package. There could be a couple of more packages which is there, something like service, validator, blah blah blah, but they don't do the database job. All the database job in the world is written with DAO packages. So that's where the naming convention. DAO meaning data access object. The next package, so we want to maintain some level of standard. So I want to have a interfaces. For this, I'll create a package. So let's say the package name is com.sdet.jdbc dot, I would say interfaces or STDS. So which are basically standards or interfaces, whatever you feel like. The last package is the client, is a client. So I create a package. I'll say com.sdet.jdbc dot client. So client is a place where we have the main method. So today or probably tomorrow latest, we will introduce one more client who is called as JUnit. This can be one of the client. So just to give heads up, if you look at this, there are like some nice five packages, minimum to minimum in your world. When you try creating a JDBC applications, make sure that there are five applications. Of course, we would have went ahead and put everything in one package, but not a good idea. That's little bad. So once the packages are right, what we do is we'll just go ahead and start putting the data. Where is our data going on? We are trying to talk on this corner where most of Java related things are happening for us. So first and foremost, we know what is called as a table, which is created here. This is where the table is. So what I do is for this, let me create a bean. I'll go back to this guy. I should find what is called as beans. I'll create a new table, new class. So for imagine yourself, for every table, there will be a bean class in Java. So what is our class name? I'm sorry, the table name. The table name is customer. So I'll pretty much create a class called as customer. Again, it's your choice to create whatever you want. I just want to keep a sync between the database and the Java application and making the same convention. So I will have private uh, int cust id, private string cust name, private string cust email, private double cust salary. Again, the naming convention in Java is different. Naming convention in database is different. So people coming from database, they would have probably used like underscore and lowercase. But people coming from Java, we always do camel casing. That's where we come across. So quickly, what I do is I will save this and generate getters and setters. All right. And I also need a couple of more things. First and foremost, I need a toString because I don't like to print each of the attribute every time. So toString is good. The next guy who's gonna come will be the constructor. Yeah, constructor using fields. I select all. So this I need it. I don't know when these are all required, but I will also keep one default constructor to ensure that we may need this at some point in time when we fetch, right? I just keep the default constructor just to keep compiler happy in case we need it, we can still use it. So we got a default constructor, we got a parameter constructor, there's a toString function, and there's a nice getters and setters for all the variables. So this is where we can try using the B, so which is more of a reusable component here again. So once if this is done, let's look back to our diagram. What we have to do is we have taken care of bean so that there's a mapping between database table and the Java bean. That's perfectly fine. So now moving further, I want to have a connection here. The connection is to be written in another package. Let's go back. So here I will have connection. Let's create a new class. I would say the class name like get connection. So this class shall have all the connection related information. If you are connecting to multiple databases, it has to we here and all variables related to this file or in this class. Sounds good. So I want to have few variables. So first and foremost, if you have a look at this guy who is driver manager, and we want this part to be constructed on the verge of constructing this, we want the it's something like a road where you want to move few vehicles, or in our case, SQL statements. For moving any number of vehicles, we want only one road. So since you want only one road in Java, we can easily depict it with something like static. So we don't want the object to be constructed for every SQL transaction which it goes. Rather, I want to have a class level variable. So I will say something like this. Um, connection, connection. I'll take it from java.sql package. Connection is equal to none. And I also need few variables for sending the data and getting the data. I'm sure that we know what is called as a PS, which is called prepared statement. When the data comes back from the database, it is called as result set. So let's go ahead, create the variables. I'll make it public. I just don't want to create data sensitive as of now for some reason. I'll tell you why also. Public prepared statement PS. Initially, let's say it as null. I can also have PS1 is equal to null. So assuming that if you want to have multiple prepared statements or multiple SQL statements which you want to send it, you can try using it. Or you still have an opportunity to use something called as execute batch. And I'll also have public result set rs is equal to null. So all your things are set. Yeah, pretty much. So now I want to have public static. So here it will be static. We'll make sure that this is static. So public static get connection. So what is the return type of this? Return type of this is connection. So this guy will return you the connection. So the whole idea here is we will have a static method called as get connection, which returns a connection. Now, what is my connection? The connection is a place where you want to travel from one end to other end. In our case, it happens to be from Java to this place. That's the whole idea. So on the verge of it, this connection object has to be constructed. Now, just before this, very, very, very important thing. Have a look at this. There is some business logic which is written here. So what is my business logic all about? This business logic will tell, hey, if you want to connect, if you have the SQL calls or SQL statement, that I will convert it internally to database calls. Somebody has to do this, right? This is all done by API. Now the question is, where is this API? So the API, if I want to try finding it, it is basically a jar file. This is basically a jar. So jar file, we have to find it in their official website. If I'm using MySQL, it will be there in MySQL. If you're using Postgres, it will be there in Postgres official site. If it is Oracle, Oracle's official site, and so on. So everybody will have in their own servers. Or there is a nice guy here who's called Maven. So we call it MVN repository. Let's try opening this guy. So this guy will have pretty much everything. So what is my Maven repository? Now imagine yourself where we are building an application. I'm sitting in India, so there's somebody who's sitting in UK. There will be few people sitting in US and other places. Now let's assume we are all working on the same application, and it happens to be coincidentally. Let's assume it is MySQL. So what happens? The company decides, okay, we're gonna use MySQL. Perfectly fine. Now what version it is? 5.7. So just for instance, so we all connected to 5.7. Perfectly fine. So there are few calls which you want to do. What we do is we all will go to a place which is mysql.com, right? Get the jar file and put it in our application, right? We'll put it in our place. But imagine tomorrow MySQL.com says that, okay, we will having the jar which is like 5.7. Now we are deprecating it after like couple of years. I want a couple of months. I want to have 5.8. What I have to do is behind the screen in India, there are hundreds of people. Behind the UK, there are a lot of people working. In US, there are hundreds of people are working. So each of this is one developer, assume that, or a tester, somebody like me and you, right? So what they have to do is everybody have to go to their site. So tomorrow 5.7 has become 5.8. They have to take and keep it here. They have to keep it here. This is not a problem. This is still achievable. Imagine for some reason we are using something called as Selenium. There may be some Spring. There is some Hibernate. There is some web services. And so there are hundreds of websites. So you may want log4j, you will go to Apache site. You want to extract data from Excel, you will invariably go with somebody called as point. And so there are hundreds of people. So now you have to invariably tell, okay, if you're using Py, go here. If you're using web services, go here. If you want Spring, go here. If you want Selenium, go here. So everybody invariably has to connect to every corner, which is probably, which, as of today, it is not possible at all in the world. It is not possible. Rather, what we do is we don't want to have all these people whatsoever, because there may be 100 plus websites which you are hitting for downloading the jars. We don't like to have it. So we want to get rid of all these people. So it's an amalgamation work. I just do a control Z quickly. So my whole idea here is we'll not have everybody here. Rather, what we do is this. We'll go back and try putting all our jar files. So these companies have come across and come forward to help the developers community and put everything in a place which is called as Maven. Maven. So Maven, or many times people call it MVN, whatever you call it, it is good. So MVN. So what MVN does is these people will try talking to underlying database people or underlying API provider people. If you want Spring, you want Hibernate, you want Log4j, if I want SLF4j, you have 800 different types of database in the world. For all these things, data or the dependency jar is kept in this place. So what we do is anybody out there who's working in India, UK, or US, they will not go to their official sites. Rather, they have a dependency of the jar, they only go to Maven. So what my Maven do is Maven will help you to get the jar and keep it here. Now the question is, where is this jar kept in your system? Every operating system will have a home directory, either it is Macintosh, Linux, Windows, anybody for that matter. So in my Windows, I go to start run. So if I put a dot and hit enter, people from uh, Unix background, Linux, or any Macintosh, you can just put CD on your terminal. You'll pretty much reach the home directory. So here you should find a folder which is called as .m2. So if we just go back and properties, I don't know where can I find this hidden files. Okay, so hidden files. So here is my hidden files. I should find it. There is a file which is called as .m2. Now, .m2 file is basically a repository file which all your Maven files are downloaded. Now, we will have to understand it very cautiously here. When people go and try taking the Maven file, it has to be stored in your system, because if there is a user here, so what he do is it has to be stored here. So where is it stored? This is all stored in M2. so that every subsequent time you want the jar, you don't have to go to Maven repository in the cloud. Rather, you can refer it in your local system. So I hope that is making sense. So here, in my case, I have somebody called as all my dependencies are there. So if you just spend a minute to try reading it, I use Antella, AOP Alliance, ASM, Avalon. I have CGLib, which is basically a logging framework. You have a lot of commons work from Apache itself. You have HSQLDB if you want to connect it, all your IO work, and so on. You name it, you have it here. So here I can also find somebody called as MySQL. You have Log4j, you have somebody called as com. So in the com, you have so many people. Probably if you are trying to connect to Twitter, there's an API. If you want to connect to Amazon AWS, there's an API, and so on. For everything, I have a API which people have already written it. So in this words, let's go and understand how can my MySQL work. So I will go back to browser and try looking. You can do a Google or you can directly come to the search bar and try doing it. I say MySQL driver. MySQL driver. Because we want a driver manager, I should find the driver. So I can find MySQL connector J, not this MySQL driver. You have MySQL driver here. You also have MongoDB driver. Look at this MariaDB, ABC, ADBCJ. No, there are like probably so many databases in the world who does this. But as of now, let's go back and click on MySQL driver. Here, the good idea is we can go ahead and do a Google. So MySQL driver file JDBC makes sense. So here it should pretty much take you in the first couple of links. We should be able to find it. So here MySQL connector connector JDBC jar. Okay. Okay. Even say Maven. Maven. Because we want to take it from Maven. There are other places also where you can find. I'm not denying it, but I just want to show you most times preferably go with Maven because everything what is required in the world is there. So there are a few websites like Java 2s or Java 9s. Of course, MySQL official site itself has it, and so on. So here you have it. So if you look at this, when you get to the right place, this will look very similar. So it looks very similar to the XML path. So what happens? This will have some basic information. One is group ID, the artifact ID, which is a logical name, and the version. So I want somebody like 5.1. So I can just select it. The moment you click on it, it is copied to your clipboard. So now I got to paste it. But unfortunately, in your project which you have done so far, this is Java project. If you want to achieve this with Java project, what you can do is I'll show you both the ways. So this is little important and interesting. So you can go back and copy this. This is perfectly fine. Or you have to find a place where we can download this. So here you see here files. You can get the form or you can even get the download of a jar. So I click on jar. It'll ask you where to download. So what I do is I'll keep it little nicely, probably C drive in uh, online training. Yeah, perfectly fine. So here in May, I just want to keep. I'll create a folder called as jars. So I'll push it here. So if I go back to SDET, there's a folder which is called as jars, which you can keep. So now you say, if you say something like, "Hey, look at this, Naveen. We want this uh, Java application to be as it is. We don't want that to be a Maven application." So in such case, you can still keep it, keep things as it is. You can right click on the project, go to build path. Here you have a last option which is called as configure build path. When you click on this, it will open a new screen. There you should click on libraries. Libraries. There's one library which is called as JRE library, which is already there. But this time I want to put some external jars. So you have an option, second button on the right hand side. Click on add external jars. So now I have to locate where my jar is kept. It's in C drive, online training, in the main. I have to look for a folder called as jars. There is a jar file which we have downloaded. So now let me say OK. So the jar file has come and I'll say apply OK. If you have this, meaning all the work which these people have amalgamated and done between Java and the MySQL, this API file is what we are keeping it. There's one way to do it, but I don't want to stop it here. I want to show something else. I'll go back, build path, configure build path, libraries. Under libraries, I just want to remove it. I don't like to add it this way. I'll say apply. Okay, so my file is not there. Or I can right click on this application, make this application configured. If you see the last but one option, which is called as configure, here you have something called as Maven project. We can convert the existing Java project to Maven project so that this Maven project will create a new file which is called as pom.xml. The pom.xml here meaning project object model. So now when it opens a pop-up, it will ask you for some basic information. Group ID. Group ID is basically uh, something like your package naming. For our reference, I'll say com dot JDBC works, or let's keep it very simple, like Java works, right? And I'll say finish. So when I say finish, it changes the project architecture and makes this file additionally with a new file which is called as pom.xml. So on the left hand side, if you see, there's somebody called as pom.xml. Now pom.xml, this will give you a view something like this. On the right hand side, bottom corner towards right, on the screen, you see there is a pom.xml. When you click on it, it will give you the XML version. The XML version. So now we try knowing it after version. You got to put not after anything in the build. So what is to be put in build in our course? We are not touching it. But if you have some plugins which you want to do it, this is the nice place to do it. So now I want to have few dependencies. I want to have dependencies. So all your dependency, which you get it from MVN repository, has to go inside dependencies. That's the first cautious note. So what I do is, I'll go back to this guy where we wanted MySQL. I just select this, copy it. I'll just uh, paste it. Seems good. So in order to download it, I just click on save. The moment I click on save, look at bottom right corner. It just downloads it, and here it has got Maven dependencies. In my case, it has become very quickly because I have already used 5.16, which is there in my local host. To prove that point, so here to prove that in my home directory under .m2, I should find .m2. Here under repository, I should find somebody called as MySQL. MySQL. Look at this. MySQL, MySQL connector Java. I have various versions 5.16, 5.121, 5.131, 5.137, right? And so on. So now I have this jar. Where is this kept? It is kept in here. It's kept here. You see, there should be a jar file. There should be a jar file. So the same jar file which you have downloaded, it is done by this guy. He does pretty much the same job. But the good thing is, any dependency of the jar which you want, you just have to make that entry in pom.xml. All the required jars are taken out, right? So this file can be really, really fancy, which we see it again. We're gonna visit to this file once again with the help of when we go for Selenium, Cucumber, preferably I want to go with Maven because that's a way how the application has to be scaffolded, right? So what we did, we went ahead, we took the jar. Okay, so once you took the jar file, you put it in the project. Now what next? I want to have Java to communicate to database. That's the first thing. So if I want to have Java to communicate to database, it's a very simple understanding. I don't know if we come from C and C++ programming background, I'm sure that we would have listened to something called as socket programming, right? So in the simplest term, what is my socket programming is if I want to connect from one system to another system, there should be some kind of connectivity or a port which should be possible such that one system can send data to another system or at the same time get an acknowledgement. Somebody has to do it. So if you want, you can go ahead and do it, or the code is already written and they have kept it in the API in the dependency which we have done. So if you try exploring it, this class, there's a beautiful jar file out there. Here, I can go to one of the package which is called as com.mysql.jdbc. Under this, under this, there is a class which is called as driver. There are a lot of other classes which probably we are not using it here. So there's one class which is called as driver. So the database metadata, there is a escape processor, there are a few extensions of the class and so on. But our interest is to identify this class which is called as driver. So this driver class is sole responsible to establish the connection between these two parties, right? So if you want to establish a connection between these two parties, it is all done by driver class. So what I do is I'll right click here, copy qualified name. So you can go back and say com.mysql.jdbc.driver, perfectly fine if you could do it, or you can right click and copy qualified name. Anything is good. So now I will go to get connection. Here I have this is what I have copied. This is what I have copied. This is what we wanted. So now I'll just cut this. I'll say class dot for name. So this is very interesting statement which is called class dot for name. Now class dot for name will invoke this class and load that class here. That's the first idea. So what your class dot for name does, if you have some business logic written in some class, in my case it happens to be in driver class, whatever business logic which is written there, which will come and sit in my class. So just to prove that point, so what I do is collapse this, I'll collapse this. I'm just gonna save this for a minute. I'll explain you very neatly here. I'll go back to source. I just want to create a package. I don't know. We had anything called as assignments. Okay. So let's create a new package which is called as com.sdet.day11. It's a simple package for today. So we're not doing any fancy work. I want to have a class which is called as some API. So that's what I want to call it. The class's name is called some API. I don't have to have any method, but I want to have a static block. I'll say system.out.println some API is called. I'm not putting any complicated code. This can be as complicated as you need. This is perfectly fine. Now, in order to invoke this business logic here in my class, let's have some API client. So this is a client class. So here I'll have a main. I don't have to do something called as some API. Yes is equal to new some API. Rather, I can do something like class dot for name, fully qualified name. What is a what is fully qualified name? It should be com dot sdet dot day11. Perfectly fine. I'm gonna paste it here. Dot some API. Look at this. It is as simple as this. This will throw you a checked exception. The good idea is let's go ahead and surround it with the try catch block. So which is class not found exception. Let's play this. All right. Look at this. It calls some API is called. So just by doing class dot for name, this statement will load the class which you want. In our case, what we have done, if we cautiously try doing it, the same story. We try doing class.forName of com.mysql.jdbc.driver. This guy will go to that class and load everything and give it to our class. This is very important. When you try doing this one statement, it's like substituting hundreds of statements, and we don't have to really understand how this connection is all done. Out of your interest, if you want, go ahead, try doing, or try reading some white papers from MySQL. So now, taking it further, this connection is ready to go. So it means somebody in the world is helping you to lay this path. So this is like a road. So once the road is laid out, now you have to send the data to a database. So now, which road should SQL take is the question. So for doing it, I will have connection object connection is equal to driver manager dot get connection. So I'll be using the last overloaded method, which is the first parameter is URL where it has to go. The second is username. The third is password. So now let's put this. So I want to connect from JDBC to MySQL, which is there in localhost. The database happens to be online DB. Now, if you ask me, hey, look at this, Naveen, how did you construct this? Okay, now this is something which I have to show it by uh, going to a search engine or taking you to MySQL official page. So the second parameter is root. I have a password on my system, which is called Kanchan, right? So this makes sense. I have to know what is this. Quickly here, if you are searching it, you may have to say Java MySQL connection string, right? So there are a lot of sites who's gonna come. So let's try opening it. I'll open this. I'll open this. Anybody out there? There are a lot of people who keep writing it. So I'll just open the MySQL's official site. It's taking a little time. Great. So now here they have clearly written in the documentation. So when you want to hit the driver manager, get the connection. This is what you want to do it. So let me zoom this also. So here I'll say JDBC MySQL in the local host. So you want to check if you want to pass some parameters, use cursor or fetch, either it is true or not. Then you may have to give username and the password. So this is what we have done. There are a lot of people who do this. So if I go to one of the tutorial site, so even here I should find it. I should find even here, somewhere here. Look at this. These people have written it. So first and foremost, this information will tell from where to where we have to. Is that fair enough? So now let me keep it here. Likewise, if you want it for Oracle, Postgres, DB2, DBW, SQL, anybody for that matter, the same old story will happen. Since these people threw the exception, I will surround it with try catch block. I surround it with try catch block. That's so once if things are done, so what I do is I'll return connection. So if you recall, the return type of this is connection. Just to keep the compiler happy, I'll return null. So that if there is an exception here, the connection will not be written. So this will give you the stack trace. Once after this, I'll return null. So this get connection, I would just say this is get MySQL connection. MySQL connection. Likewise, if you want something for Oracle, then you will create one more method for Oracle connection. If you want it for Postgres, you will create Postgres. we may have to know underlying driver class dot for name and the connection information, how it has to be passed. All right. So now one important thing is, as we have MySQL, we can also have another method which we are not really going and filling it, but I just wanted to show you that. So you can also have get Oracle connection, but I don't want to write anything. I just return null as of now. All right. So if you just have a look at this, I have a method for MySQL connection. I can have a method for Oracle connection. I can have a method for Postgre, DB2, DBW, anybody. So ideally, this package, which is called as connection, will have only one class. Ideally, that should be the good case to deal with things. So in our case, what we have done, if we just go back to the diagram here, have a look at this. We have Java, where we have beans. We have this guy where the driver manager is established and whatever required jars we have already quoted. Now we have to know, or we have to decide what operations I needed on the database side. Okay, let's go back and check it. So here for this we have an exclusive package. The package name is under JDBC. We have somebody called standards, STDS. I'll right click, create a new interface. So we know that all our standards will be kept in interface. I'll say I customer DAO. I customer DAO. So this interface shall have the list of methods required. Make sense? So we want to do some job. Insert, update, delete, uh, select, and maybe like select all. So that's something which we want. So that we will make sure all our CRUD operations are done. So insert is something which I want to insert a record into database. So what record we are inserting? We are inserting a customer record. I will say public boolean insert customer. What object does customer take? He has to take customer. So that's the method. So let's import the customer. I'll hover. I have to take it from beans. So if you see here, it will come from beans. The next guy is update. So now what we have to update, there could be multiple update methods. Somebody want to change their address, somebody want to change their email, somebody wants to increase the salary, whatever. So just to give heads up, I'll say public boolean update customer salary. I'll say int cust id, because if I want to update the salary, I just need the customer id. I can even take the object, but unnecessarily, which is not required, I just say customer id. Here I'll say uh, double new salary. Right. So on the verge of deleting it, public boolean delete cust id based on the value which is given. So we say delete customer int customer id. So we know that customer ID is the primary key in table. So either the record is found or not found. So we delete it based on customer ID. So select, I want to return one object for the given customer ID. Public customer get customer in custody. You give me the customer ID, I'll give you the entire customer object. Right? So hope this makes sense. The last one is select all. I don't know how many customers this guy wanted, so he wants probably all the customers. Public list of customer get all customers. What does it take? Any parameter? Hover it. On the first go, let us do these methods. So these methods will help us in long run, in fact. So most of our discussions, I'll refer it here. So whenever we go for automation as well, until we have customer login, some filling forms, whatever, doesn't make any difference. But we should be more focused towards the concept of the thing. So don't be very particular about customer or employee and all. So it's only a concept. So here it's all about the standard if you want to write it. So this has to be implemented by somebody. So who's that? He happens to be our DAO. So it's a package which we have created. The name of that is suffix with DAO. So let's go back. New class. So I'll create it as DAO, customer DAO, and say finish. But I'll also make sure this class, which is called as customer DAO, is implementing an interface called as iCustomer DAO, which implements iCustomer DAO. So since we have implemented iCustomer DAO, all the methods in the interface has to be overwritten. So what I do is I'll hover it and add an implemented method. All the methods scaffolded here. So there's an empty implementation of it. This is perfectly fine, right? So I will collapse all these methods one by one. So let's extract one at a time. So let's not get confused. So the first method which we want to work is insert. So what we want to do it, we have got a customer object. This customer object has to go and set in the database. Perfectly fine. So here in our diagram, so the customer object has to be given to database. On the verge of it, we will have some business logic method. Where is our business logic method comes, which is your DAO. The DAO will always sit here. This is your DAO. DAO. So hope that should make sense. So now we will go back here in Eclipse. Yeah, here is the Eclipse. Now I want to have SQL, string SQL. So this will have the insert statement, insert into customer with values. So let's see the customer table description. I have ID, name, email, income. There are four parameters. So for that values, I'll put it as question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. So now if you ask me what is this question mark meaning, these are called as positional parameters. Now anytime when we use positional parameters, do remember their indexing will start from 1. So this may be a little confusion as well because too many things are running around. So array index starts from 0. So hope we all know this. And iterators start from minus. Positional parameters starts from. Be very cautious. Okay. Well, now what is this positional parameters? I say these values, which are called question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, are not known at this point of time. These values will be substituted at the runtime. And we are planning to use somebody called as prepared statement. Most of our development in the world will happen with prepared statement. This meaning the value for this first question mark will be substituted later. I don't know what it is, but just be prepared with the statement and keep it compiled. The advantage of having prepared statement is they're all pre-compiled, right? So now I assume that I'll be passing four parameters. So now where do you want to send it? So I want to send it to this place. I want to send from Java to this database. Who will give this information of MySQL and all these things? This is all given by our class, which is called as connection. So we have this connection class. Have a look at this. This guy will return connection. This connection value will be setting not null only when the driver manager gets the connection from these people. So JDBC, MySQL, localhost, online DB, and username is root and password is content. If everything goes well, only in this case, there will be a connection object which is set. If not, the connection object would be null. So now I'll go back and say, hey, look at this. I want to have get connection GC is equal to new get connection gc.ps. Now ps is my prepared statement object. I'll say get connection dot get MySQL connection dot prepare state of SQL. So this meaning, so let's have a look at this. I want to have a prepared statement. What is there in the prepared statement? Prepared statement is a bucket. So now here we may have to understand very cautiously. I'll go back and delete this. Prepared statement is just a bucket. It's just a bucket. So in this bucket, I want to send SQL. So if I want to put SQL, there are a few knobs. I have to put SQL and I have to tell very clearly where it has to be sent. It is not only one database I may have a couple of more databases in my system, like MySQL running at 3306, 3307, whatever. In that case, if I have SQL statement, if I have SQL, this SQL, I should be very clear to tell or give it to SQL as where it has to go. Where it has to go is very important. I will say, go to get connection class, get MySQL connection. When MySQL connection gets the connection object, it means it has made sure everything is checked from its side. It has checked everything. Only then the connection object would be set. If not, this will give you null pointer exception. For this, I want to prepare the statement and give this SQL statement. So once this is done, I want to set the values. I'll say ps dot, sorry, gc dot, which is get connection, gc dot ps dot. I want to set the value for first parameter. Now I have to know what is the first parameter data type. Data type. So here, the first parameter data type is int. So in Java also we have int. So let's see. Dot set int. The first parameter value is customer dot get customer ID. So somebody will give you customer ID. Don't worry. We are only building the business logic. The tester or the client will come and give customer ID. So I would say in similar fashion, gs dot ps dot set string, because I know customer name will take string argument. The positional parameter happens to be the value happens to be customer dot get customer name. That's the second parameter, right? So let's see what is our third parameter. The third parameter is email. So we have the third parameter called as email. So let's go back here. gc dot ps dot set string set string of the third parameter happens to be customer dot get email. Perfectly fine. The last parameter gc dot ps dot set double. So the double is the data type for salary or income. The fourth parameter is customer dot get customer salary. So all our positional parameters are set. So the first one meaning here is for the first question mark, second question mark, third, fourth. So we have all set. So we have to understand this, that here you have put SQL, you have put this SQL in the bucket. You put this SQL in the bucket plus the values what are needed for SQL is also set, because we have done the set int, set string, set double, all those things. Now I have to take this, I have to take this, and from Java, I have to start moving it to MySQL. On the verge of moving it, I should also be knowing, the developer should also be knowing what kind of statement it is. Does it fall into DML category or DQL category? So this is an insert statement, so they fall in DML category. So it means it is insert. So for this, we have a special guy. I'll say gc dot ps dot execute update, execute update. So if you're doing insert update delete, it's a common method here which is called execute update. So execute update will take the value and it will give you the acknowledgement as integer. So if you just hover it here, maybe gives an exception. Maybe we gotta fix it. But here, execute, update. Let me zoom it here. Execute, update. Yeah, here it is. So when I say execute update, the execute update return type is int. The int is number of records affected in database. So executes the SQL statement in the prepared statement object, which must be an SQL, DML, or data manipulation language statement, such as insert, update, delete, or an SQL statement that returns nothing, such as DTL statement. So it returns either one row count for DML, two, zero for SQL statements, and so on. Right? It may also give an exception, which is called as SQL exception, and it will also give you a timed exception in case the system gets slower than the expected one. So the whole idea here is when I do the job, it will give you an exception, which is it will give you an acknowledgement of integer once the job is successfully done or not. So now what I do is I'll store this in a variable int count. If count is greater than 0, it means return true. Else, return false. So hope this is making sense. So for all these things, I just hold it, surround it with try catch block. Right click, surround it with try catch block. So just to keep compiler happy, I'll return null. So this happens to be your insert method to post the data into MySQL database. So now Uh, let's try taking this further and execute. Maybe if you want to put this as 4 lines, it is perfectly fine, but I can even squeeze it in 1 line. So we know that execute update returns integer. So I can go back and delete this gc return gc dot ps dot execute update greater than 0. So when I say greater than 0, I know this is a Boolean expression. I'm just returning the Boolean expression because the return type itself is Boolean expression, right? So hope this is good. So let's go back and try calling this guy who is, let's say, return false. Since it is Boolean, we have to return false. So by default, I always return false. So now let's go back to the client and I'll say here, here, a new class called as customer client. Customer client. So let's have the main method. On the verge of having it, I want to create a quick class. I'm sorry, a customer object, new customer, customer dot set, customer ID 101, customer name, this at gmail.com. Set cust salary is like so something like that. So this is the customer object. So now I want the DAO. So I customer DAO, customer DAO is equal to new DAO, customer DAO dot insert customer. So what this guy will do is this guy will pretty much store Boolean flag, which is because the return type of insert customer is Boolean, so we can store it in Boolean. So now I can just say system.out.println, or we may have to do this job if flag is equal to true. You may have to say system.out.println record inserted, else, sorry, not inserted. You may have to do this. Or I can squeeze it as one line. I can use ternary operators. So I don't like to see with if clause, which is obviously slower in our case. So I'll delete it. I'll say system.out.println flag e- equals true, true, question mark, record inserted, else, sorry, not inserted. It is as simple as it. So I'll say flag, record inserted. This is the true case. After the question mark, this is a true case. This is a false case. Right? You don't have to really write this also. In fact, flag. This is perfectly fine. If the flag is true, by default, that will check. This is the true case. This will be the false case. No use of if conditions now. All right. So let's see if we can go ahead and click on play, and if things work well. Oh, great. In first go, it worked well. So it says record inserted. Let's go back and check if CP's record is there. So I'll just select asterisk from customer. Great. So here is your record. In similar fashion, I just want to put a couple of more. So I want to have one or two. Just want to put one more record with Aditya. So I'll click on play. Great. So I'll have one more record, which is 103. So I'll have Ashwini. So Ashwini, I'll have like 8100. Click on play. Great. So I should find about three records. So look at this: Sibi, Aditya, and Ashwini. There are like three people who are there in my system. And all the things I'll tell you, 90% of the load is all taken by this class. These two lines are magic statements. So we just tried passing username, password, and tell where this connection is. That's it. It's pretty much done. We have not done anything. Apart from that, we've gone to customer DAO. We just say, oh, look at this. We want the statement. This is where the data has to go, which is MySQL. These are the values. Go and execute. Done. So let's collapse this method, which is insert. I'll keep it as it is. So here, let's go ahead and expand update. So what we want to update is employees or customer salary. So I know the SQL statement. I'll say string SQL is equal to update customer set. What is the field name? We have to be a little cautious. Here the field name is called cust income. Cust income. Cust income is equal to question mark. Customer ID is equal to question mark. So that's what we want to say. I want to update customer setting income is equal to something, which I will be substituting that with this. ID is this. So I'll go back and do the same job. Get connection. GC is equal to new get connection. GC dot PS is equal to get connection dot get MySQL connection dot prepared statement of SQL. That's perfectly fine. GC dot PS dot set double. The first value is new salary. GC dot PS dot set int of second parameter is customer ID. Look at this. I'm just substituting the question mark values. Then I'll say return gc.ps dot execute update greater than 0. This is perfectly fine. This is perfectly fine. Let's run try catch block and it's all done. Trust me, it's so easy, so simple to put it in database now. All right. So let's see if we can execute this. I'll go back to client. In the client, I don't want to invoke the insert again and again. So I will pretty much go back and comment it. I'll just comment it for some time. And we still use the same old object of customer DAO of updating some customer. I'll say customer DAO dot. So I've got to give customer ID. Let's give 101. The new salary will be, let's say, 8800. Right? So this will return you Boolean. So you see the return type. Of course, we know that the return type of update method is Boolean. So now we will have uh, syso system.out.println. If this is true, I can pretty much put in ternary operator. If it is true, a record updated successfully, else, sorry, not updated. It is as simple as it. So we know that this guy will give you true. If it is true, record updated successfully, else, sorry, not updated. Let's see. So the current salary of CB is 8,000. Okay. So what we do is we'll go ahead and click on play. Great. Record is updated. Let's go back and check. It is 8,000. It is 8,800. It is as simple as it. So likewise, if I want to change it for Aditya, so I'll say 1, 2, make 800. I click on play. All right. Here is it. This is 7,800, 9,800. Right? So hope this should be okay. This is where the update is. So the next method which we have is delete. So delete is here. Then we have two more people. But these people work little differently now. So we got to be little more cautious in terms of understanding. So let's go back and understand this. Here, so object. Okay, so here. So far, what we did, there was an end user who came, gave the DML statement, it hit to the database. The database acknowledged int, which is number of records. Perfectly fine. But now the story changes. We will not have DML. It still goes and gives the data to database. It happens to be DQL. When you give DQL, it meaning it is a select statement. This is actually a select statement. When you give a select statement, the database will not or cannot give something like integer. It has to actually give the value. So what should be our statement? It will be something like select asterisk from customer or select. Just to start with, for the first time, I want to write a select statement here. I will say select asterisk from customer where cust ID is equal to 101. Imagine this. When I say 101, what is possible? Either I'll get one record, I will not get any record. That's what gonna happen. So in my case, if I have a customer whose ID is 101, then I exactly get one record. If not, I'll not get because the customer ID itself is primary key. So now when it goes to this person whose database, it will try constructing. If the record is found, it will try constructing some details like customer ID 101, the name. In my case, it is CB, the email at the rate Gmail, whatever, and some salary, some. And this value has to invariably come here. Now, how does it look like in database? This is called as a cursor. Be very cautious to know this. Very clear. This is called cursor in database. I'm talking in database. But in your Oracle, sorry, in Java, this looks pretty much the same. Pretty much the same thing. It is 101 CV at the rate Gmail, the salary. They start from -1, 0. That's how it's done. And this, if you extract this completely, if you extract this completely, this will give you the hash. This will give you the hash. But we are not interested to see the hash code. Rather, rather, we want we want 101. We want CP. We want CP at gmail.com. We want 1000, whatever. Right? For this, what I have to do is I have to put this to result set. Result set. So this is all stored in result set. In result set, when I say next, it will go to this position. It will go to this position at the 0th position. Here I have to ask result set, hey, look at this result set. Can you give me the int at 0th position? I'm sorry, it's at the first position. Or can you give me the value at this second position? Can you give me the value at the third position? Can you give me the value at fourth position? When I say this, only then the atomic values are given. When I say atomic values, which is basically readable information, or in our case, it is something which you can show it to end user. So those informations can be given by result set. So first thing we got to write a select statement, send your database, get the cursor, convert it to result set. Result set have to be iterated. How many records can be there? There could be multiple records. As of now, we know that will be only one. Since it is only one, I'll be using if condition. The next example, we will write only this much. Select asterisk from customer. So there are possibility many records will come. So if there are many records, in such case, I have to replace this if with while while case. So let's quickly go back and try filling this code. I'll say get customer here. So we want only one customer. I would say string SQL is equal to select. I can always do asterisk. So I can always do asterisk. But as a good programmer, I don't like. I don't want to do that. I'll just copy this, guys. I just copy this. Both meaning same. I'll also tell you where it changes now in a minute. Why this is better, why that is not better. See, in my case, I've written customer ID, customer name, customer email, customer income in certain order. Imagine if I try using asterisk and if there is a database designer who's going to come tomorrow, the database designer says that we want to interchange the column fields. Like customer ID should not be first, it should be at the last. In such case, asterisk may create a problem because we'll be looking for the first attribute of the table to be customer ID. That may be replaced with customer name, then the entire program will go for a toss. So keeping that in mind, I always feel good to write it with the field names. Again, it's your choice. So here, I will say select the fields from customer where cust ID is equal to question mark. I put it in next line. So once if this is done, I'll go back to this guy, get connection. That's where our prepared statement is there. So prepared statement will still be there. Let's be very clear here. The prepared statement is one guy who can help you to take the value. So this is your PS. So PS has to take this value. This has to go with PS or DQL statement. So here, new get connection. Connection is to new get connection. That is a good convention because we're just following it. So it's a gc.ps is equal to get connection dot get MySQL connection dot prepared statement of SQL. So here gc.ps dot set int, the first parameter is customer ID. That's it. That's it. So this time I know that it is SQL. It's a DQL statement, which is a select query. Now I will say gc.rs, which is result set, and we have to know it. I'll also show you a few things. I'll say gc dot ps dot execute query. So be very clear, it is not execute update. You'll be using a method which is called as execute query. So if you see the return type of execute query, that happens to be result set. So if you see here, it is result set. So now the return value has to be set in result set. We know we already have created the result set object, which is rs in the get connection class. It is stored here. So now result set, result set will hold the value. So in order to do that, if gc.rs.next. So if it is next, it means it will blindly go from -1 to 0. Be very cautious. Result sets are always read-only. There are few exceptional cases where we will be having result set can be changed. Read-only. There are cases, right? So there are it's most times it is read only. There are few exceptional cases, right? So if gc.rs.next, it means it has moved the cursor from -1 to 0. So when it moves from -1, when it moves from -1 to 0, it means it has got the record. In case if it has, if it does not have, it will give you null. So in that case, I want to create an object which is called customer. New customer.set. The first attribute is customer ID. Customer ID, of course, we are using customer ID. Here, gc.rs.get in. We remember what we did in prepared statement. We did something called as set int, set string, set double, or whatever. So here in result set, we do get because the values are getting. We want to store it in the bean object. So in that case, we'll say first column. This is where I was very skeptical because we most times people write get column of one. One for me refers to customer ID. Tomorrow, the designer changes customer ID to something else, then that might be a problem if they are doing interchange. Be very cautious. That's why I go with always writing this meta information instead of as. Right. So here I'll say customer.set customer name gc dot rs dot get string of 2. Very good. Customer dot set email gc dot rs dot get string of 3. So here customer dot set salary is gc dot rs dot get double of 4. So it is as simple as that. Then finally return customer. So what I do is once if everything is done, I select the whole part, right click, surround it with brackets. Things are done. This is your select method. We tried writing a query, got the connection, connected to database, set the customer ID, executed, data is stored in the result set, process the result set, get the values, keep it in the customer object, finally return the customer object. That's it. And if nothing goes well, if there is an exception, the null is kept. So let's go back to the client and check my client here. I will comment off this guy who's an update. So here customer is equal to customer dot get customer of 101. Makes sense. This is good. So I believe the customer is already there. So I'll say return customer. because the variable card customer is already there. So now I'll just quickly do system.out.println. Customer ID is return customer.get customer ID. Customer name is return get customer name. Customer salary. I'm sorry, email. Let's go up in order. Return customer.get customer email. Customer or income salary, whatever. Dot get salary makes sense. So when I give 101, this guy will give you the entire object. The object is kept here, and we want to showcase. Let's save this and click on play. Makes sense. This is awesome. So I have 101, CP, the details. So if I go back and say 102, I click on play, I should find Aditya. Let's say 103, Ashwin. So if I say 104, which is not there, it should give you null pointer exception. Very good. It gives you null pointer exception. At line number 30, the line number 30 is this. So of course we don't have it. So for this we can again check if the return value is null or not null. We can surround it with the try catch block and so on. A lot of mechanisms which we can do it. But I believe we have got a heads up on what is the select statement. So the last method, which is in our case, where we want to get all records, get all the records. So this is where we want it. So in this case, let's go back to our diagram, which we were trying to draw here. Imagine if I give only this statement. So if I say select asterisk from customer, so when I get many records, there might be, this might look something like that. But it might look like this. Here we have data to be constructed like this. 102, I'll say Ashwini. So at gmail.com, whatever salary. So I say 103, I'll say Tripti. I'll have at the rate Gmail with salary. 104, Ravi at the rate Gmail and some salary. So how does it look in the cursor or in your result set? It does pretty much the same. So here it will not be only one record. I can have multiple records. So here I would just put the way how it looks in result set. So I'll put pretty much the same story here. I have 102 and the details, 103 for the details, 104 and the details. Makes sense. So result set will start from -1, it will go to 0, it will go to next, it will go to next, it will go to next. It goes to next, it is not there, it will exit. So since you have more records, you cannot use if condition, we will be going with while. So there will be multiple conditions. So invariably we try storing everything in a list. That's an idea behind it. So hope that should be okay. So let's go back and try exploring this. Get all. So I will be declaring few variables out there. So the first and foremost is list of customer, customer list is equal to new array list. So that's my first variable. First I got to give customer grade. So that's something which we will do. So we will also have a string SQL is equal to select these values or these attributes. So in my case, let's put a command. right, from customer, right? I'll say get connection. GC is equal to new get connection. This is something which we've been doing it. GC.ps is equal to get connection dot get MySQL connection dot prepare statement of SQL. We are not setting any parameters because the query itself does not have any parameters to be set. But when I get gc.rs, gc.ps.execute query. So when this guy executes, it will go and sit in the rs. But this time it will not be while, it will not be if, it will be while gc.rs.next. So there may be one. So in such case, we use the while condition. So here, what we want to do is we want to construct something like this. I don't know how many elements will be there. So the whole idea here is we'll have a nice list. The list, we keep saying it as add. What we have to add? We have to add a customer. So first thing is we have to get the customer. We have to get the customer, and in the list we have to add it. So I'll do a little bit of copy pasting because we have already done some good work in the previous method. Here, this one, this, I'll just copy it. I just copy this get customer. Here, I'll put it. So I hope this is making sense. Customer, I create an object, get the int of the first position, set it to the customer. Second to name, third to email, fourth to salary. Then I will, we have already created a variable which is called as customer list dot add customer. Makes sense. That's it. Then finally, we don't want to return null, we want to return customer list. Hope this is making sense. So we'll select the entire code, right click, surround it with try catch block. Great. That's it. Where you can iterate all the records to the user. Okay. So if this is done, let's go and check in the client. So in my client, I comment of this guy. So we still want to use this. I want to have a list of customer. This is equal to customer DAO dot get all customers. So it's where let's go ahead and hover it and import it from java.util because that's not there. So I can use a for customer, return customer in list. So I just try using as much as code which is already written than writing repeated code. So hope this makes. The variable name here is iterated. So I'll also give a nice separator so that we can differentiate each customer case. I'll go back and click on play. Great. So here is now. I should find each customer who's stored in my database. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.